Day 5 started like all the others. Hot, wet, painful. Hajin woke before dawn and immediately felt the weight of everything pressing down on her. She sat up slowly. Her shoulders screamed in protest. The bandages she had wrapped around them were soaked through with blood and sweat. She changed them quietly, not wanting to wake the others. But Corporal Jiwon was already awake. She watched Hajin change the bandages. Her face was tight with worry. "You need to let someone else carry that medical kit." Hajin shook her head. "No. Why? This is stupid. You are hurting yourself for nothing. It is not for nothing." Hajin finished with the bandages and started packing her gear. "If I quit now, Thrak wins. He gets to say humans are weak. He gets to say we do not belong here." Jiwon was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You know he might be trying to kill you, right? This is not just testing. This is cruelty, maybe. But I'm not dead yet." The column moved out with the sunrise. Hajin fell into line. The pack felt heavier every day. She had started walking differently to manage the weight. Her back was bent forward. Her steps were shorter, but she kept moving. One foot in front of the other. That was all that mattered. The terrain changed as they moved deeper into the jungle. The trees were bigger here. Their roots made walls that the column had to climb over. The ground was soft and muddy. Every step sucked at their boots. The humans struggled more than the others. Their smaller size meant they had to take more steps to cover the same distance. But they adapted. Sergeant Park taught them to use rope for the steep climbs. They would tie the rope to a tree at the top and use it to pull themselves up. It was slower than how the Rexians climbed, but it worked. Some of the alien soldiers started using their ropes too. It was more efficient. Even Commander Thrak noticed. Hajin saw him watching as Park set up a rope system for a particularly steep climb. Thrak said nothing, but he nodded slightly, like maybe humans were not completely useless. Hajin also started sharing her plant knowledge more openly. When they stopped for breaks, she would point out plants that were safe to eat. Some added flavor to the bland rations. Some had medicinal properties. A Threxian scout named Vek started following her during breaks. He would ask questions about the plants. Hajin would answer. Then Vek would share his own knowledge about tracking and navigation. It was a fair exchange. One evening Vek asked her a question. "Why do humans work so hard to prove themselves? You are small. You are weak compared to most species. Why not accept this and find a different role in the coalition?" Hajin thought about it while she chewed on a piece of edible root. "Because we are small does not mean we are useless. We have other strengths. We adapt, we solve problems. We do not give up easily." Vek clicked his mandibles in what might have been agreement. "That is true. I have noticed your species is very stubborn." Hajin smiled a little. "Yes, very stubborn." But the pain in her shoulders was getting worse. By day 6, she could barely lift her arms above her head. The straps had worn through the bandages and were cutting directly into her skin. She wrapped more bandages. She tightened the straps in different places. Nothing helped much. The weight was just too much. Her vision started to swim sometimes. From exhaustion, from pain, from not eating enough because she was giving some of her food to Rix. The young Vrexian was struggling. His leg was not healing well in the jungle heat. He needed protein. Hajin would slip him pieces of her ration bars when no one was looking. He tried to refuse at first, but she insisted, "You need strength to heal. Take it." Rix would take the food. His amber eyes showed confusion. "Why do you help me? My species treats yours with contempt because you are hurt and I have food to share. It is simple." But it was not simple to Rix. Hajin could see it in his face. Vrexians did not help the weak. Weakness was shameful. To accept help was to admit weakness. But Rix was learning that human logic was different. Humans helped because they could, not because they had to. On day 6, they made camp near a river. It was the first running water they had seen in 2 days. Everyone was grateful. They could refill their canteens. They could wash off some of the mud and sweat. Hajin volunteered for first watch. She knew she would not sleep anyway. The pain in her shoulders made it impossible to lie down comfortably. She walked the perimeter of the camp. The jungle was never quiet. There were always sounds. Insects buzzing, strange birds calling, things moving in the underbrush. Hajin had learned to identify most of the sounds. She knew which ones meant danger and which ones were just normal jungle noise. Then she heard something different, a high-pitched sound, almost like crying. It was coming from deeper in the jungle, away from the camp. Hajin stopped and listened. The sound came again. It was not aggressive. It was frightened. Maybe hurt. She should alert the camp. That was protocol. But something made her hesitate. The sound was so desperate. So afraid, Hajin made a decision. She would investigate first. If it was dangerous, she would come back and alert the others. If it was nothing, no one needed to know. She moved carefully through the jungle. Her rifle was ready. The sound grew louder. It was definitely crying. Animal crying. Hajin pushed through a thick patch of vines and stopped. 3 Kraith cubs huddled in what remained of a den. The den had been destroyed. Maybe by the fight 4 days ago. Maybe by another predator. The cubs were small, no bigger than earth dogs. Their gray fur was matted and dirty. They looked at Hajin with wide, terrified eyes. One of them was injured. Its front leg was bent at a wrong angle. Broken. It whimpered and tried to crawl away from Hajin. The other 2 pressed close to it protectively. Hajin knew what she should do. These were Kraith. Dangerous predators. These cubs would grow up to be the kind of creatures that had attacked the column. The smart thing would be to leave them. Or kill them. Remove a future threat. But Hajin thought about Earth. She thought about wolf cubs and bear cubs and lion cubs. Humans had a strange relationship with predator young. There was something in human nature that wanted to protect baby animals. Even baby animals that would kill humans when they grew up. Maybe it was because human babies were so helpless for so long. Maybe humans just understood vulnerability. She lowered her rifle. She took off her pack, slowly so she would not scare the cubs more. She opened the medical kit. The cubs watched her with terrified eyes, too weak to run. "It is okay. I am not going to hurt you." Of course they did not understand her words. But maybe they understood her tone. Soft, calm. Hajin moved slowly. She examined the injured cub's leg. Definitely broken. She had splints in the medical kit. Small ones meant for fingers, but they would work. She set the leg carefully and splinted it. The cub cried out in pain. The other 2 tried to defend their sibling, but they were too weak. They could barely stand. When the leg was splinted, Hajin gave the cubs water from her canteen. They drank desperately. They were severely dehydrated. She broke up one of her ration bars and offered it to them. They ate it quickly. When was the last time they had eaten? Their mother was probably dead, killed in the fight. These cubs had been alone for days, slowly starving. Hajin sat back and looked at them. They were still afraid of her, but less so now. Now she had a problem. She could not leave them here. They would die. But she could not bring them to the camp. The other soldiers would kill them or leave them. She needed to get them to a safe part of the jungle, somewhere they could survive until they were old enough to hunt. That meant she would have to carry them, along with everything else she was already carrying. Hajin looked at her pack. The medical kit, her own gear, and now 3 Kraith cubs. It was impossible. Absolutely impossible. Her body was already at its limit. This would break her, but she could not leave them. Something in her would not allow it. Maybe it was that human instinct to protect the helpless. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was both. Okay, we will figure this out. She used straps from the medical kit to create a kind of carrier on top of her pack. It took 20 minutes to get it right. The cubs did not understand what she was doing. They tried to crawl away, but they were too weak. Hajin lifted them one by one and placed them in the carrier. They weighed maybe 15 kilograms total. Not much, but added to everything else, it was crushing. She secured them carefully, made sure they could not fall out. Then she stood up, or tried to. The first time, her legs would not hold the weight. She fell to her knees. The cubs squeaked in alarm. Hajin took a deep breath. She tried again. This time she made it to her feet. The weight was incredible. She felt like the pack was going to drive her into the ground. Her shoulders blazed with pain. Her back screamed in protest, but she stayed standing. She took one step, then another. The cubs squirmed a little, then settled down. Maybe they sensed that she was trying to help them. Maybe they were just too exhausted to fight. Hajin walked back toward camp. Every step was agony. She moved slowly, carefully. She could not afford to fall. If she fell, she might not get back up. When she reached the edge of camp, Commander Thrak was waiting. He must have noticed she had been gone too long. He stood with his arms crossed, his amber eyes glowing in the darkness. When he saw her, he went very still. He stared at the cubs on her pack, stared at Hajin bent nearly double under the weight, stared at the situation that made no sense to his Vrexian mind. Day 9 began with Hajin unable to stand. She opened her eyes and tried to sit up, but her body would not obey. Her arms would not lift. Her legs would not move. For a moment she panicked. Was this it? Was this where her body finally gave up? Then feeling came back slowly, pain, so much pain, but at least she could feel. She tried again to sit up. This time her body responded, barely. She moved like an old woman, every motion careful and slow. The cubs were awake, watching her with concerned eyes. They chirped softly, "I am okay. We are okay," but she was not okay. She knew it. Everyone knew it. When she tried to stand, Corporal Jiwon had to help her. When she tried to lift her pack, Sergeant Park had to help. They said nothing, but their faces were tight with worry. Hajin looked around the camp. Every soldier was watching her, waiting, wondering if today would be the day the human finally broke. Commander Thrak walked over. He looked at Hajin for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Private Kim, you have proven your point. You have shown remarkable endurance. No one will question human strength if you choose to abandon your burden now. I will personally ensure those creatures reach safe territory." It was an offer. A way out. Hajin could accept it and no one would blame her. She had carried the cubs for 3 days through impossible terrain. She had nearly died. She had proven whatever needed proving. But she looked at the cubs on her pack. They were so much stronger now, so much healthier. They looked at her with trust. They knew she would protect them. "Thank you, Commander, but I will finish what I started." Thrak nodded slowly, as if he had expected that answer, as if he would have been disappointed by any other answer. "Very well, Private, but if you fall, I will not allow you to continue. Am I clear?" "Yes, sir." Crystal clear. "Then I will not fall." The march began. Hajin took one step, then another. Her body screamed at her to stop, to lie down, to give up. But she did not listen. She focused on small goals. Make it to that tree. Make it to that rock. Make it to the next rest stop. Small goals that added up to forward progress. The column moved slowly that day. Even the alien soldiers seemed subdued. They kept looking back at Hajin. She had become something of a legend in just 3 days. The small human who would not quit. The weak creature who showed impossible strength. Stories were already being told around the campfires at night. Some soldiers had started calling her by a name in their own languages. Burden bearer. Pack mother. The stubborn one. By midday, Hajin was moving in a kind of trance. She was not really thinking anymore. Just walking, one foot, other foot, breathe, repeat. The cubs were quiet on her pack. They seemed to sense she needed them to be still. Sometimes one would chirp softly and Hajin would respond without thinking. "I know, almost there. You are doing so good." During a rest stop, Vec the Threxian approached her. He carried a piece of fruit from his own rations. He offered it to Hajin without speaking. She took it gratefully. The fruit was sweet and helped with her energy. Vec sat nearby, not too close, respecting her space. "You have changed how we see your species," he said after a while. "Before you came, we thought humans were prey, soft, weak, useless in combat. But you have shown us something different. You have shown us that strength is not just about claws and armor. It is also about endurance, about choosing to carry burdens that others would refuse." Hajin managed a small smile. "We are still soft and weak compared to you. That has not changed, perhaps, but you are also stubborn, and brave, and compassionate in ways we do not understand. Those are strengths too." After the rest stop, they continued. The jungle started to change. The trees were different here. The plants were different. Hajin recognized the signs. They were entering a new territory. This was the edge of Kraith hunting grounds. Tomorrow they would be past it. Tomorrow she could release the cubs. Just one more day. She could do one more day, but her body had other ideas. That evening, as they were setting up camp, something went wrong. Hajin was lowering her pack when the world tilted sideways. She did not remember falling. One moment she was standing. The next moment Sergeant Park was catching her. The cubs were squealing. People were shouting. Then everything went dark. She woke up in a medical tent. How much time had passed? She did not know. Her body felt strange, light. She looked down and saw that someone had removed her pack. The cubs, where were the cubs? Panic surged through her. She tried to sit up. A mantis-like creature pressed her back down with one of its limbs. The medical officer. A Threxian whose name Hajin did not know. The creature's translator clicked, "Do not move. You are severely injured. Malnutrition, dehydration, infected wounds, muscle damage. You need immediate medical evacuation." The cubs. Hajin's voice was barely a whisper. "Where are they?" The medic's mandibles clicked in what might have been confusion or respect. "Outside. They refuse to leave. They keep crying for you." It is unusual behavior. Imprinting, perhaps. Hajin tried to move again. "I need to see them. They are scared. You need to rest. Your body is failing. If you do not receive treatment soon, you may die." But Hajin was not listening. She reached out and grabbed the medic's limb with surprising strength. "Get them home. Promise me. Get them to safe territory. They deserve that chance." The medic stared at her. I will inform the commander of your request." Hajin's grip loosened. Darkness was pulling at her again, but she fought it long enough to whisper one more thing. "Please. They are just babies. They deserve to live." Then she was unconscious again. This time she did not wake for hours. When she finally opened her eyes, it was dark outside. The tent was lit by a single glow light, and sitting beside her, holding one of the Kreeth cubs and feeding it from a military ration pack, was Commander Thrak. Hajin blinked. She was sure she was hallucinating. But no, it was really him. The massive Vrexian commander, warrior of a proud species, bottle-feeding a predator cub with surprising gentleness. Thrak noticed she was awake. He looked almost embarrassed. "They would not eat." The medic tried. "Your squad members tried. But the cubs refused food from everyone. Then I realized they have bonded to human scent, specifically your scent, so I am attempting to feed them. It seems to be working." The cub in his arms was drinking happily. The other two were curled up nearby, sleeping peacefully. Hajin felt tears on her face. She did not remember starting to cry. "Thank you." Thrak set the cub down gently. He turned to face Hajin fully. His amber eyes were intense. "No. Thank you, Private Kim. You have taught me something important, something my people forgot long ago. You have taught me that strength is not just in destroying enemies. It is also in protecting the helpless, even when protecting them costs everything." He paused, seeming to struggle with the next words. "My people define strength by what we can break, by what we can kill, by what we can conquer. You define it by what you can carry, by what you can endure, by what you can protect. I am not certain which philosophy is better, but I know which one I prefer." Hajin tried to respond, but exhaustion was claiming her again. Thrak saw this. "Rest, Private. I have called for an emergency extraction. A ship will be here by morning. You will receive proper medical care, and I will personally ensure these cubs reach safe territory. That is a promise from one warrior to another." Hajin wanted to argue, wanted to say she could continue, but her body would not let her. She nodded slightly and let the darkness take her. When she woke next, she was on a transport ship. Medical equipment beeped around her. Sergeant Park sat nearby, his face showing relief when he saw her eyes open. "Welcome back. You scared 10 years off my life." Hajin's voice was weak. "The cub's safe, in a transport cage next to you. See?" Hajin turned her head slowly. There was the cage. The 3 cubs were inside, sleeping peacefully. They looked healthy, strong. They would survive. She had done it. She had saved them. The relief was overwhelming. Park continued talking. "You are being recommended for the Coalition Star. First human to receive it." Commander Thrak wrote the citation himself. Apparently he can write poetry, who knew? The brass were crying when they read it. "You changed something back there, Kim. Not just in Thrak, in all of them. They look at humans differently now." Hajin did not care about medals. She cared that the cubs were safe. She cared that she had kept her promise. That was enough. But there was one more question she needed to ask. "The other humans? Did they finish the march?" Park smiled. "All of us. Every single human finished. We made it, Kim. We proved we belong here. Good, that is good." Hajin let her eyes close again. She was so tired, but it was a good tired. The tired that came from finishing something important, from keeping a promise, from proving that humans could do what needed to be done, even when it seemed impossible. As she drifted off to sleep, she heard Park talking to someone. Probably Corporal Jiwon. She is the most stubborn person I have ever met. I thought that was a problem. Turns out it is exactly what we needed. Stubborn enough to carry the weight of the entire galaxy if that is what it takes. That is the kind of strength that will make humans respected here. Not our weapons, not our technology. Just our refusal to give up even when giving up would be easier. Hajin smiled a little in her sleep. Maybe Park was right. Maybe that was what humans brought to the coalition. The ability to see something that needed doing and do it, even when the cost was high. For a long moment he said nothing. Hajin stood there and waited. Let him say something. Let morning came too soon. Hajin woke to the sound of the column preparing to move. Her body felt like it had been beaten with hammers. Everything hurt. Her shoulders, her back, her legs. Even breathing hurt. She sat up slowly and looked at her pack. The cubs were awake, watching her with bright eyes. They had made it through the night. That was something. She gave them water and small pieces of her ration bar. They ate eagerly. They were still weak but stronger than yesterday. The injured one was moving its splinted leg carefully. Good, it was healing. Hajin checked the splint, adjusted it slightly, then started preparing her own gear. When she lifted the pack, she almost fell. Her legs shook under the weight. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision. She stood very still until the spots faded. Then she walked to join the column. Every soldier turned to look. Word had spread overnight. The human was carrying predator cubs. The small, weak human was doing something no one else would do. Some of the alien soldiers laughed. A Crothian warrior made a comment about prey protecting predators. Others looked confused. A few looked disturbed. This did not fit into their understanding of how things worked. Prey ran from predators. Prey hid from predators. Prey did not carry predator offspring through hostile jungle, but Hajin ignored them all. She found her place in the column and waited for the order to march. Commander Thrak walked past her. He stopped, looked at her, looked at the cubs. His face showed nothing, but his eyes were thoughtful. Then he moved on without speaking. The march began. Hajin fell to the back almost immediately. Her pace was slower now, much slower. The weight was too much. She could not keep up with even the other humans. Sergeant Park dropped back to walk beside her. Kim, you need to let me carry that medical kit, or give those cubs to someone else. You cannot do this. Hajin kept walking, kept her eyes forward. I can do this, Sergeant. No, you cannot. Look at yourself. You can barely walk straight. Your face is white as paper. You are going to collapse. Not yet. Park grabbed her arm, stopping her. Kim, I am ordering you to let someone else carry that weight. Hajin looked at him. Her sergeant, her friend, the man who had trained her and protected her. She saw the worry in his face, but she also saw something else. He knew why she was doing this. He understood. He just wished she would not. Sergeant, if I give up now, what does that prove? That humans quit when things get hard? That we cannot be trusted to finish what we start? I know this is difficult. I know I might fail. But I have to try. Park stared at her for a long moment. Then he let go of her arm. His voice was quiet. You are the stubbornest person I have ever met. Yes, Sergeant, he walked away, but he stayed close for the rest of the day, ready to catch her if she fell. Hajin appreciated that. Even if she would not accept his help with the weight, it was good to know someone was watching. As the day went on, something strange happened. Alien soldiers started falling back to walk near her. Not to help, not to mock, just to watch. Hajin became a spectacle. This tiny human, bent nearly double under impossible weight, still moving forward, still taking one step after another. It did not make sense to them. But they could not look away. Rix hobbled back to join the watchers. His injured leg was wrapped in fresh bandages, but he was still limping badly. He walked beside Hajin for a while without speaking. Finally, he asked the question, "Why do you do this?" Hajin did not look at him. She needed to watch her feet. Watch where she was stepping. One wrong step and she would fall. Do what? Carry those creatures? Help them. They are not your young. They are not even your species. They would kill you if they were grown. Yet you suffered to protect them. I do not understand. Hajin thought about how to explain it. How to make a Vrexian understand something that was so natural to humans. They are babies. They are helpless. That is enough. But that does not make sense. They are your enemies. No, their parents were enemies. These cubs have done nothing wrong. They are just trying to survive. Rix was quiet for a moment. In my culture, we would leave them. or kill them. Weakness is not protected. Weakness is removed. Then your culture is different from mine. Yes, very different. Rix paused again. He seemed to be struggling with something. The food you gave me, the help you offered, that was also against logic. I am Brexian. My people treat yours poorly. Yet you helped me anyway. You were hurt and I had food. Simple as that, but it is not simple. Not to me, not to any of us. We do not understand your species. You are small and weak, yet you do things that are brave. You have no claws or armor, yet you do not run from danger. You should be prey, yet you act like protectors. It confuses us. Hajin smiled a little, though it hurt to smile. Maybe that is good. Maybe you should be confused. Maybe it means you are learning something new. Rix walked away after that, but he looked back several times. Thinking, processing, learning. The cubs started to get more comfortable with Hajin. They stopped trying to escape from the carrier. Instead, they would burrow into her pack, using it like a nest. When they were scared, they would make small chirping sounds. Hajin started talking to them quietly as she walked. It helped her focus on something other than the pain. We are almost there. Just a few more days. You are doing good. So good. Sometimes she would sing to them. Old Korean songs her grandmother had taught her. Songs about mountains and rivers and long journeys. The cubs seemed to like the sound of her voice. They would settle down and sleep when she sang. Some of the alien soldiers heard her singing. They stopped and listened. Music was something most species understood, even if the words were foreign. That night they made camp in a clearing. Hajin lowered her pack very carefully. Her shoulders were so damaged now that even removing the pack was agony. She peeled off her shirt to check the wounds. They were bad. Really bad. The skin was torn in several places. Some of the wounds were infected. She cleaned them as best she could and wrapped them in fresh bandages. But she knew it was not enough. She needed real medical care. But there was no medical care. There was only forward. She fed the cubs again. They were stronger now. The injured one was putting weight on its splinted leg. Good signs. Hajin allowed herself a moment of hope. Maybe they would make it. Maybe she would make it. Maybe this insane plan would actually work. But that hope was shattered the next morning. Day 8 began with rain. Heavy rain. The kind that turned the jungle paths into rivers of mud. The kind that made every step a struggle. The column moved slower. Everyone was miserable. But it was worse for Hajin. The mud sucked at her boots. The rain made her pack heavier. The cubs were scared of the rain and kept squirming. She had to focus completely just to stay upright. They reached a ravine by mid-morning. It was not wide, maybe 20 feet across, but it was deep, very deep. There was a fallen tree across it that served as a bridge. The Vrexians crossed easily. The other aliens followed. No problems. Then it was the humans' turn. Sergeant Park went first. He made it across fine. Then Jiwon, then the others. Finally, it was Hajin's turn. She looked at the log. It was wet from the rain, slippery, and she was carrying more weight than anyone else. Her balance was bad. This was dangerous, but there was no other way across. She stepped onto the log. Her boot slipped immediately. She caught herself. Took another step. The log was round and unstable. The weight on her back shifted. The cubs squeaked in alarm. Hajin focused on her feet. One step, another. She was halfway across, then her foot slipped. Really slipped. She went down hard, slamming into the log. Her arms wrapped around it desperately. The pack shifted violently. The cubs screamed. Hajin held on, her legs dangling over the ravine. Below her, she could see rocks and a small stream. A fall would kill her. Hands reached for her from both sides of the ravine. Soldiers were shouting, but no one could reach her safely. If they tried to pull her up, the pack might shift more and drag her down. Hajin tried to pull herself up, but the weight was too much. Her arms were shaking. She could not hold on much longer. Then a massive hand grabbed her arm. Rix. He had come out onto the log, his injured leg forgotten. He pulled with surprising gentleness, careful not to jostle the pack. Another hand grabbed her other arm. A Vrexian warrior she did not know. Together they pulled her up. Pulled her forward. Pulled her to safety. Hajin collapsed on solid ground. She was shaking. The cubs were screaming. She checked them immediately. All three were okay. Scared, but okay. The carrier had held. She looked up at Rix. He was breathing hard, his face twisted with pain from putting weight on his injured leg. Thank you. Rix looked at her. His translator was working hard to convey emotion. Why? Why do you do this? I need to understand. You almost died just now. For creatures that are not yours. For a burden that is destroying you. Why? Hajin looked at him, looked at the cubs on her pack, looked at her hands, still shaking from the near-death experience. She thought about the question, really thought about it, and finally gave the only answer that made sense to her. Because someone has to. The words were simple, but they hit Rix like a physical blow. Hajin could see it in his face. He did not understand. Not really. But he was starting to. He was starting to see that humans operated on a different logic. A logic that put protection over survival. A logic that chose kindness even when kindness was hard. The column moved. The transport ship touched down on Karo 7 with a heavy thud that Hajin Kim felt in her chest. She stood in line with the other human soldiers, waiting for the cargo bay doors to open. Through the small window she could see shapes moving outside. Big shapes. Very big shapes. The doors opened. Hot, wet air rushed in. It smelled like rotting plants and something else. Something animal. Hajin picked up her pack and followed Sergeant Minho Park down the ramp. Her boots hit alien soil for the first time. The Vrexians were waiting. Hajin had seen pictures, but pictures did not prepare her for the real thing. They stood 8 feet tall, covered in dark green scales. Their eyes were amber-colored and bright. When they breathed, Hajin could see rows of sharp teeth. Each one looked like they could tear a human apart without trying hard. Around the landing zone, other alien species stood in groups. Some had forearms. Some had shells like insects. Some looked like they were made of living rock. All of them were staring at the humans. Hajin heard whispers in languages her translator could not catch. But she did not need translation to understand the looks. They were not friendly looks. One Vrexian warrior laughed. The sound was deep and rough. He said something to his friends. They all laughed too. Hajin's translator picked up a few words. Prey, weak, soft. Her face grew hot, but she kept walking. Sergeant Park had told them this would happen. Earth had fought for 20 years just to get humans into the coalition. They were the newest members, the smallest members, the weakest members. Hajin looked down at her own hands. No claws, no scales, just soft skin that cut easily. She was 5'4" and weighed 120 pounds. The Vrexian who had laughed probably weighed 400 pounds. Maybe more. The human squad lined up in formation. There were 12 of them. Sergeant Park stood at the front, his back straight. Corporal Jiwan Lee stood next to Hajin. She was older than Hajin by 4 years and had been in the military longer. She leaned close and whispered, "They want us to fail." Hajin did not answer. She already knew. A massive Vrexian stepped forward. His scales were darker than the others and he had scars across his face and arms. His rank markings showed he was a commander. He looked at the humans like someone might look at insects. "I am Commander Thrak." His voice was so deep Hajin felt it in her bones. "You are here for the Karo 7 survival training. This training has been used for 300 years to test warriors. Many species have sent their best soldiers here. Some succeed, many fail. Some die." He walked slowly in front of the formation. His amber eyes studied each human soldier. When he reached Hajin, he stopped. He looked down at her for a long moment. She looked back. She would not look away first. After a few seconds, something changed in his eyes. Not respect, maybe surprise that she did not look down. "The exercise is simple," Thrak continued. "You will march 200 kilometers through the jungle. You will carry your own equipment. You will not help each other with weight. You will hunt your own food if your rations run out. You will avoid or fight the predators. You have 10 days. If you arrive at the end point, you pass. If you quit, you fail. If you die, you die." He paused. His teeth showed in what might have been a smile. But it was not a kind smile. "This will separate the warriors from the weak." When he said the last word, his eyes were on the humans again. The briefing continued. Thrak showed them maps. He explained the dangers. There were animals with 6 legs that hunted in packs. There were plants that could poison you if you touched them. There were rivers that moved too fast to cross safely. The temperature would be over 100 degrees during the day. It would rain every night. The humidity would make it hard to breathe. After the briefing, they were shown their equipment. The packs were huge. Hajin lifted hers and nearly fell over. It was designed for Vrexians. It was designed for soldiers who weighed 3 times what she weighed. But there were no human-sized packs. Everyone used the same equipment. No exceptions. That night, the human squad gathered in their temporary barracks. It was a metal building that was too hot. Hajin sat on her bunk and looked at her pack. She had already organized everything 3 times. She had removed anything that was not absolutely necessary. It was still too heavy. Sergeant Park stood at the front of the room. His face was serious. Listen up. We all know what this is. They think we cannot do this. They think we will quit or die trying. They want to prove that humans do not belong in the coalition military. They want to send us home with our tails between our legs. He looked at each soldier. Earth fought for 20 years to get us here. 20 years of meetings and tests and proving ourselves. We are not going to waste that. We are going to finish this march. All of us. Together, Corporal Jaiwan Lee spoke up. Sergeant, those packs are too heavy. I know we have carried heavy loads before, but this is different. This is torture disguised as training. Park nodded. Yes, it is. But we do not have a choice. We carry them anyway. We help each other when we can. We watch each other's backs. We do not let anyone fall behind. We do not leave anyone. Hajin lay on her bunk later that night. She could not sleep. Through the wall, she could hear the alien soldiers talking and laughing. They sounded confident. They sounded like they belonged here. The humans were quiet. They sounded worried. Hajin thought about home. She had grown up in the mountains. Her family ran a wilderness guide service. She had learned to hike when she was 5 years old. She had carried heavy packs through difficult terrain many times. But this would be different. This was not Earth. This was a planet that wanted to kill her, and she would be carrying a pack that was made for someone 3 times her size. She rolled over and looked at the ceiling. It was metal and plain. She wondered if she would see Earth again. She wondered if any of them would. The next morning came too soon. The sun rose hot and angry over Caro 7. The mixed species column assembled at the edge of the jungle. There were about 60 soldiers from different species. The Vrexians made up half the group. There were also Threxians with their insect-like bodies, Crothians with their thick shells, and a few other species Hajin did not recognize. And then there were the 12 humans. Commander Thrak gave final orders. The march would begin in 10 minutes. There would be no vehicles, no air support, no rescue unless someone was dying. They would be on their own. Hajin lifted her pack. The straps dug into her shoulders immediately. She adjusted them, but it did not help much. She looked at Jiwon. Jiwon looked back. They both knew this would be bad. Move out. The column began to march. The Vrexians moved easily, their powerful legs eating up the ground. The other alien species kept pace without trouble. The humans fell to the back of the column within the first hour. The jungle path was not really a path. It was just slightly less dense than the rest of the jungle. Tree roots reached up to trip them. Vines hung down to catch their packs. The ground was soft and wet. Every step was work. By noon, Hajin was soaked with sweat. The humidity was worse than anything she had experienced on Earth. It felt like trying to breathe underwater. Her pack felt like it weighed twice as much as it had that morning. Her shoulders were already starting to hurt. They stopped for a break. The alien soldiers barely looked tired. Some of them were not even breathing hard. The humans collapsed on the ground. They drank water and tried to catch their breath. Hajin looked up and saw Commander Thrak watching them. His face showed nothing, but she thought she saw disappointment in his eyes. Like he had expected this, like he had known the humans would struggle. She looked away and drank more water. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her quit. None of them would. The march continued. Day 1 became Day 2. Day 2 became Day 3. The humans adapted slowly. Sergeant Park taught them tricks. They used rope to help each other up steep hills. They shared the work of scouting ahead. Hajin used her knowledge of plants to find food that was safe to eat. It helped stretch their rations. Some of the alien soldiers started to notice. A Threxian scout asked Hajin about the plants she was collecting. She explained which ones were poisonous and which ones were safe. The Threxian seemed surprised that a human knew these things. The next day he shared his own knowledge about tracking water sources. It was small, but it was something. Not all the aliens hated them. Some were just curious. But Hajin's shoulders were getting worse. The straps were cutting into the same spots every day. She had bandaged them, but the bandages were soaked with sweat and blood. Every step sent pain shooting down her back. She did not complain. Complaining would not help. She just kept walking. On day 4, everything changed. The column was moving through a dense part of the jungle when the attack came. The creatures moved so fast that Hajin barely saw them. 6-legged, covered in gray fur with mouths full of teeth. Kraith, the predators Commander Thrak had warned them about. The column scattered. Soldiers drew weapons. The Kraith hit them from 3 sides at once. They were smart hunters. They worked together. One would attack from the front, while 2 more attacked from the sides. It was chaos. Hajin dropped her pack and grabbed her rifle. She fired at a Kraith that was charging a Vrexian soldier. The creature went down. Another one came at her from the left. She rolled away and fired again. Miss. The Kraith was too fast. It would reach her in 2 seconds. Then a massive hand grabbed the creature. The ability to protect the vulnerable, even when the vulnerable would grow up to be dangerous. The ability to 6 months later. Hajin stood in a ceremony hall that was far too big. The ceiling stretched up so high she could barely see it. The walls were decorated with symbols from dozens of different species. Coalition representatives filled the seats, their varied forms making the hall look like something from a dream. Or a nightmare, depending on your perspective. Hajin wore her dress uniform. It felt strange after months of recovery. She had gotten used to loose clothing that did not press on her healing shoulders. But today was official. Today was important. Today she would receive the Coalition Star, the first human to ever earn it. She was not sure how she felt about that. Proud maybe, but also uncomfortable. She did not like being the center of attention. Sergeant Park stood in the front row with the rest of her squad. Corporal Jiwon was crying already, even though the ceremony had not started yet. That made Hajin smile. Jiwon always cried at important moments. Next to them stood Rix. The young Vrexian had healed well. His leg had recovered. He was now a full warrior, no longer a trainee. He stood with his claws crossed over his chest in formal salute. Behind them, dozens of alien soldiers who had been on that march. They had all come to see this. Commander Thrak entered from a side door. He had been promoted to general since the march. He wore formal armor that gleamed under the lights. In his hands he carried the Coalition Star on a cushion. The metal was beautiful and huge. It had been designed for Vrexians. On Hajin's small human frame it would look ridiculous. But she did not care. It was the meaning that mattered, not the size. The hall fell silent. Thrak's deep voice filled the space, amplified by speakers so everyone could hear. We have gathered today to honor Private Hajin Kim of Earth. But before I present this medal, I want to speak about why she is receiving it. For decades, we in the Coalition have debated what makes a warrior. What makes someone strong? What makes someone worthy of respect? We believed the answers were simple. Physical power, combat ability, the willingness to destroy enemies. These were the qualities we valued. He paused, his amber eyes sweeping across the audience. Then humanity joined our coalition, and they brought different answers to these questions. Private Kim showed us that true strength is not in bearing weapons, but in bearing burdens. Not in the capacity to kill, but in the refusal to abandon. She carried predator cubs on her back through 100 kilometers of hostile jungle. She did this while bearing equipment that would challenge a Vrexian warrior. She did this after we wounded her with impossible expectations. She asked nothing in return. She simply carried them. And in carrying them, she taught us something profound. Thrak walked toward Hajin. She stood at attention, her back straight despite the phantom pain in her shoulders. She taught us the difference between a warrior and a soldier. A warrior fights for glory. A warrior seeks honor in battle. A warrior proves strength through victory. But a soldier serves despite the cost. A soldier endures what must be endured. A soldier protects what must be protected even when protection is painful. Even when it would be easier to walk away. He stopped in front of her. Private Kim, you are the embodiment of what a soldier should be. You put the welfare of the helpless above your own survival. You carried a burden that was destroying you, because you believed it was the right thing to do. You did not seek recognition. You did not expect reward. You simply did what needed to be done. For this and for showing the Coalition a new definition of strength, I present you with the Coalition Star. He pinned the medal to her uniform. It was heavy, almost comically large on her small frame. But when the hall erupted in applause, Hajin felt the weight of it differently. It was not just metal. It was recognition. It was respect. It was proof that humans belonged in the Coalition. Not as the weakest members, but as equals, as necessary members, as soldiers who brought something the coalition needed. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Hajin did not enjoy receptions. Too many people, too much attention, but she endured it. Soldiers from different species came to speak with her. Some offered congratulations. Some asked questions about Earth. Some wanted to shake her hand or whatever their species equivalent was. Hajin was polite to all of them, but she was relieved when Thrak appeared and gestured for her to follow him to a quieter area. They stood on a balcony overlooking the city. It was evening. The lights of hundreds of buildings glittered below them. Thrak reached into his armor and pulled out a small data chip. I wanted to give you this privately. It contains tracking data from the cubs. They thrived in the preserve. They learned to hunt. They learned to survive. 3 months ago, they were released back into the wild. This data shows their first month of freedom. They are doing well. They stay together as a pack. They avoid humans, but they do not flee from them. You gave them a chance at life, Private Kim. They are living that life. Hajin took the data chip carefully. Her hands were shaking slightly. She had not realized how much she needed to know the cubs were okay. Thank you, General. This means more to me than the medal. Thrak made a sound that might have been Vrexian laughter. I believe that. My people have a saying, the pack is known by what it protects. You protected creatures that were not your young, not your species, not even your allies. You did this at great cost to yourself. By my people's definition, this makes you not prey, but the finest kind of pack leader. They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Then Hajin asked a question that had been bothering her. General, if you could go back knowing what would happen, would you still test me that way? Still give me impossible weight? Thrak was quiet for a long moment. Then he answered honestly, no, I would not. I believed I was testing your weakness. I did not realize I was revealing your strength. And my own ignorance. I nearly killed you to prove a point about human inferiority. Instead, you nearly died proving a point about human excellence. I carry that shame still. It is a heavy burden. Hajin smiled slightly. Burdens can make us stronger. If we choose to carry them. Thrak's rumbling laugh was genuine this time. Yes, you have taught me that lesson well. Your species is strange, Private Kim. You joined the coalition as the weakest members, yet I believe, given time, you will prove to be among the strongest, not because you can fight better than us. You cannot. Not because you can endure more pain, many species surpass you there, but because you can bear witness to suffering and choose to alleviate it. You can see an enemy's offspring and recognize children. You can carry the weak when carrying them might break you. This is a strength my species lost long ago, if we ever had it at all. The months that followed brought changes. Hajin returned to active duty as a corporal. She was assigned to a mixed species unit. Her squad included 2 Vrexians, a Threxian, and 3 other humans. They were informally called the Pack, a name that started as a joke but became real. The squad worked well together. The aliens learned to value human problem-solving and adaptability. The humans learned combat techniques from the more physically powerful species. It was a good balance. Rix was assigned as Hajin's second-in-command. At first this seemed strange, a Vrexian warrior taking orders from a small human. But Rix had learned on that march that strength came in different forms. He respected Hajin's judgment. He valued her perspective. And he never forgot that she had helped him when she had no reason to. That meant something in Vrexian culture. It created a bond. Their first real mission together was on a mining colony threatened by malfunctioning drones. The drones had been programmed to defend the colony, but something had gone wrong. They were attacking everything that moved. The colony administrators wanted the drones destroyed. It was the simple solution, the safe solution. But Hajin looked at the problem differently. She asked to examine one of the disabled drones. She studied its programming. And she discovered something. The drones were not broken. They were confused. Their code had been corrupted, but it could be fixed. Instead of destroying valuable equipment, they could save it. It would take longer. It would be more difficult. But it was possible. The squad spent 3 days isolating and repairing the drone network. It was dangerous work. But they succeeded. The colony saved millions in equipment costs. More importantly, they kept their defensive systems intact. The administrators were grateful. But what struck Hajin was her squad's reaction. They had not questioned her decision to try to save the drones instead of destroying them. They had trusted her judgment. That trust meant something. One evening after the mission was complete, the squad gathered in their barracks. They were sharing a meal, as had become their custom. Rix asked a question that had clearly been on his mind for a while. "Corporal Kim, I have been studying human history, and I have noticed a pattern. Your species does this constantly, takes on burdens that are not yours, protects things that do not benefit you, endures suffering you could avoid. You do it with your own young, with other species' young, with creatures that hunt you, with machines, with ideas. Why? We have discussed this before, but I still do not fully understand." Hajin thought about it while she ate. She had been asked this question many times since the march, and each time she tried to give a better answer, an answer that would help all.